Okay, so always same people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you. On the screen are the pairs we'll be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video, as I do have a bonus pair in store. So as always, we'll go through my trade for the week first, take a look at that. We'll go through the DXY as well, and then progress into the analysis. So if there is a particular pair you do want to skip ahead to, feel free to do so. I do have the timestamps listed below. But I had one new position this week on Pound Aussie, which I entered right at the end of the week. So not much to report on in terms of its development, but I am looking to see if we can catch another swing to the downside for this one. I've been pretty bearish across quite a few of the crosses, Euro Aussie, Euro NZD, Pound Aussie, Pound NZD. I do think there's a bit of downside for these guys. They've been bullish for quite a while and some very nice trends, but we've come into some very significant areas, especially Pound Aussie. You can see these were highs dating back to COVID. We had that really chaotic period in the market. Now price has since gone to spike through those highs pretty aggressively. So I do expect to see a bigger retracement now for Pound Aussie. Of course, the trend is still up. And for all I know, potentially we might just see retracement and then maybe price does continue to the upside, which potentially the likely outcome. But I'm looking to see if I can take advantage of some of that retracement back to this area. Major resistance here, barely had a retest. I think there's a good chance you can come back and retest that level. At least hopefully push back into support here at 2.05, and at least that will allow me to potentially go break even and maybe secure some gains. But I'm looking for a bit more retracement in terms of the entry. Price came back into the high, kind of faked it a little bit, strong reaction. That was my entry, stops above the high. Basically just looking to try and catch the next lower high. We had the double top over there, push down, lower high, push down. Looking to see if I can catch the next one for another wave to the downside. So we'll see how that trade gets on. In terms of the dollar, so dollar's still looking for some USD strength, for some weakness later on. I am still very much bearish longer term. We had that massive drop since the year started, and I do think we can see a continuation of that. I've marked out this area of consolidation, which is really where I want to see the dollar get to before I decide to potentially look for some entries and short the dollar again, and potentially long euro, long pound. We'll get to that shortly. But this is really the area of confidence I like. You've got the 50 on the fib there running through that zone as well. I think overall that would be a healthy pullback for the dollar for us to continue falling. I have talked about this level of resistance as well, as potentially that could give us the sell. It could be, but I do want to see a bit more retracement. It's not a big enough pullback essentially, and I don't like how price had the pullback as well. So I'm looking to see if we can have that deeper move into 103.5, into 104. Then from there, potentially can start to look for some selling opportunities to take it back down. As for the current price action, we still do have this bullish structure in the 4-hour chart. So as long as we can stay respecting that, I do think we can see some more upside. Price respected this level pretty well. Hopefully, potentially price can come back and retest that. That potentially could provide some opportunities to maybe short pound, short euro, short Aussie dollar potentially for next week. So still looking at strength. As long as we continue with these higher highs and higher lows, I do think USD strength is still very much on the cards, and that is my bias for the upcoming week. In terms of the euro, so pretty much the exact opposite. Not too much this week. Did end up a little bit bearish towards the end, but we still do have this bearish structure at play, seeing low lows and lower highs. The plan, I'm looking for the next one at this area here, and again looking for the continuation. It's a nice confluence there. Maybe a nice double top would be nice for some entries, and then we can continue to ride that back down. Same situation as the dollar in terms of we've had that lovely bullish leg there, leaving behind a nice consolidation just below us. It would be nice to see price come back and retest that. Same situation in terms of the Fibonacci fib coming into play, and that I think that'll be a great place to hold positions, to swing it back into resistance and maybe beyond as well. So there's some really nice confluence below us. That's where I expect price to end up. Then again, looking for some buying opportunities, but that's probably a trade for next week or maybe even the week after. For now, this is what I'm looking at. As long as we don't break the high aggressively, I do think price is likely to fall. So shorts next week for euro, hopefully nice double top. Of course, potentially price might just drop to the downside from the current price, which might not allow you to find some entries, but that's the case. If we do come up, great. Let's see how price does react with 1.125, but that is the plan next week for euro. Okay, so now over to dollar yen. So still bullish for USD JPY. I still think we can still see some weakness for the yen. So most yen pairs I'm looking to buy this week. Really nice bullish structure here on the 4-hour chart, higher highs and higher lows. So the expectation is another higher low forming and another rally to the upside. We are trading in this kind of area of supply here, demand, sorry, where we had that gap and then price rally to the upside pretty aggressively. We're still kind of trading in that zone. There is a level of support just below us as well, which I would keep an eye on. Basically, either of these areas could give us the rally to the upside, and that's kind of where I'm looking for entries and targets back into resistance. There's still a massive level of weekly resistance just above us here around 150. That's kind of where I'm expecting price to end up next, where potentially we could potentially form another lower high and come back down again, and perhaps go and break support. But that'll be a story for maybe 2 or 3 weeks time, so we're not going to talk too much about that. As for next week, just looking to follow this bullish structure back into resistance at 150. So I would suggest keep a close eye on both of these areas. If we could see some momentum coming in, maybe a nice double bottom, that could be a great entry signal for either one of these levels. And targets back into 150, and I think make a load of sense this week, especially with the yen potentially continuing to be a bit weak. So, and of course, if USD does potentially continue its strength, that should help dollar yen push up as well. So a nice confluence there, but keep an eye on 146 and 144 for some longs next week for dollar yen. Okay, so over to USD CAD. So I am still bullish on this one temporarily. Again, still looking for USD strength, but the bigger move for me is still potentially USD CAD sells. I'm looking at the daily chart, looking at the major swings in the market. We've got one high, second one, simply I'm looking for the third for again another big move to the downside. So that to me looks like the bigger move and the likely move as we do come into these areas. So keeping a very close eye on that. Two areas which I'm keeping a close eye for that move to take place. This level here at 1.405 and this level here as well at 1.417. Both levels look pretty good. I would prefer the higher level, but again, we'll see what dollar CAD gives us potentially. We don't retrace that high. It does line up pretty well with the 50 of the fib there, so that is a great confluence for the trade, but I will have a go at shorting dollar CAD if things are good in this area. As for the bullish idea, again, we've had a lovely breakout of that descending channel. We've created some resistance, which is turning support. Price did react pretty well this week. If we were to come back down, I think that would be a nice place to pick up some more longs to take it back into resistance, and then we can start to speak about shorting dollar CAD maybe next week or even the week after. Depends how everything is moving along, but dollar CAD buys I think still look good. We haven't really seen price really show momentum and really try and continue just yet. We're kind of failing at highs there, so I can see us potentially coming back down before continuing to the upside again. And once we start coming into these areas, we can discuss some shorting opportunities, but again, I feel like that's more of a trade for, I mean, we could still push up, so it could be something we consider next week, so I would keep an eye on that. But if you do come back down first, then that's the opportunity I would focus on. So yeah, that'll be the plan next week for dollar CAD. Okay, so on to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound, we are coming to a very nice area for a buy. I spoke about a couple areas where potentially we could see some buyers step into the market and potentially see a push higher for Euro Pound. First level I talked about was 0.844, really nice resistance, potentially could act as support again at that same level, but price didn't really respect it much. We gapped into the level actually at the start of the week and then had a slight reaction and price went and broke through the level. So didn't really see much of a reaction, and we actually used that as resistance. It looks like we might be pushing further. So the second area, which looks pretty promising, which is this area of demand where price consolidated very well and we shot to the upside for a lot of momentum. It looks to me that price is likely going to end up there next week. I think this is a pretty smart place for a buy. We are still putting in these higher lows. We had the double bottom down here kind of, then the market put a higher low in and a higher high. So the plan is, can we potentially find another higher low in the sequence? Another push at the upside. Now, because Euro Pound's a very choppy pair, I'm not looking for a big swing all the way back into the highs there. That could be the case, but I wouldn't look to try and trade that. Euro Pound is not really the pair that I want to be looking to try and trend and follow momentum because it just ranges since 2016, we've been in a range, so the best part of a decade. If conditions change and we start trending well, of course, but not in these conditions. So in terms of where we're coming into, it's a smart place for a buy, but I'll be looking to lock in gains as we do come back into structure. The support there, really nice support over here as well. I think these areas make sense in terms of targets. Like I said, potentially we do swing all the way back to the high, but I would suggest securing some gains, or at least moving a stop loss to break even if you're going to look for such a big swing, especially in these conditions. But definitely a nice place for a buy. Keep an eye at 0.838 and some targets back into 0.846, 0.848, 0.852 is some areas which I would target for the trade. But that'll be a plan next week for Euro Pound. Okay, so over to Aussie dollar. So very bullish on this one as a whole. I do think long term we can still see more upside. It still comes down to my bearish bias on the USD. I do think we can still see more upside. I'm looking at a big inverse head and shoulder pattern. There's your left, there's your head. And I'm looking now for the right shoulder, and that's where I'm looking to try and find some entries. I've got a nice area just below us here around 0.625, which is where I'm looking for price to come into. Again, massive impulse to the upside, just off kind of this V-shaped pattern. So impulse down, impulse up. V-shaped patterns, very, very powerful patterns, do work out pretty well. And definitely patterns I keep a close eye on when they do form, because now I'm looking for the correction of that for the continuation. You can see prices moving in this ascending channel, looking very fatigued, very tired. So I do think a pullback is likely. And then once price starts to come back into these areas, I can start to plot some long opportunities. Similar kind of bias to Euro USD longs and dollar CAD shorts and some of the other USD pairs we'll get to later. But I like the opportunity here. Really nice area below us. Price is looking very tired, so I'm waiting for price to break lower so we can take out some of these weaker swing points, and that will give us potentially some liquidity to actually see the move to the upside I'm looking for. And of course, naturally targets will be back at resistance there, which is the high that price just formed at 0.65. So eager for this setup. Again, we're probably still a week out for that. There might be some selling opportunities on the way down, but I'm just not really seeing it, to be honest. We've got support kind of just below us. I wouldn't want to be selling directly into support. Potentially maybe a break and retest on the way down. That might look good. But to me, this is really where the quality setup lies. So waiting for pushback down into the 0.625 area for some longs next week for Aussie dollar. Okay, so over to New Zealand CAD. So I'm pretty bullish on this one. Again, another V-shaped pattern for this pair as well. A huge dump to the downside followed by a massive recovery. Again, I'm looking for basically a correction here of that bullish move for a continuation back into highs and further. We've got a nice trend line here, first test, second. Of course, that's some manipulation. And then we've got the third test to potentially continue. So in my book, this is a very, very nice place for a buy. I was actually trading this pair, but of course I did get taken out break even last week. But I am looking for some re-entry, so price can come back down into support there, perhaps even wick through the low there. That would be something great, because that would give me a nice clear-cut entry for the trade, especially taking out some stop losses underneath that prior low. And essentially, if we can hold that support level for a big double bottom, that's where I really want to base the trade from. Back into resistance, there is a level just above us here, which I expect price to hit as well. So if I do get into a trade, I will be looking to target 0.83336. That will be the plan. But yeah, to me, New Zealand CAD, very, very bullish market. As long as we can hold this confluence here, 0.817, I do think there is a lot more upside to be had. So eyes on that level and looking for longs next week. Okay, so to pound NZD. So I like the shorts for pound NZD, but I decided to go with pound Aussie instead. And again, they're very, very similar pairs, so I didn't need to take them both. They'll probably end up both making the move I'm expecting or not. But I am expecting price to have a bit of a rollover. Now, I'm looking at this as a bit of a head and shoulder pattern, left head, right shoulder. I'm expecting a move at least back into support there, but I'm also looking at push back into this swing high. 2.19, very pivotal swing. I think we can come back and potentially retest the high again. I'm looking at the higher time frames. I do think price is a bit overextended to the upside. We've been very, very corrective on the way up. It's not like it's been a clean trend. It's been very, very corrective. So I do think price is potentially getting ready for a bit of a drop. We've set the COVID highs a long time ago, so I'm still kind of waiting for the correction of that. And looking at how price rejected the highs up there, especially how aggressively we did, I do think we can turn around here and see a push down. Maybe the long-term trend is still very much up and it's still going to continue up, but perhaps now we can get a bigger correction of that. So shorts up here look good. Really nice entry signal there on the 4-hour chart. If we can continue that, respect that level again, probably might be able to get some better entries, maybe on that hourly or something. I would still recommend stops above the high there. Give yourself some room to really see the trade out. And at least targets back to the low there. I think there's a good chance we get back to support. You can call it a day there. Like I said, I do expect us to go a bit further. If we are going to have that bigger correction, and this is going to form a head and shoulder pattern, I would expect us to break support, break the neckline, and continue. But again, that is still going to be a decent trade as well. So it's up to you with targets, but I think that's a great place for an entry, 2.26, and a move back down. So that will be the plan next week for pound NZD. Okay, so over to CAD yen. So I'm pretty bullish on this one. Again, as a whole, I do think yen pairs can see some upside. I do think the JPY currency itself might see some weakness. So I am looking at upside here for CAD yen. We have come back into major support here. If we look to our left at 101.667, this is the daily chart, by the way. Came into that level a while ago, respected it pretty well, nice level bottom. And we just about took out highs there as well this week here. So I do think CAD yen's got room to the upside. And potentially a lot more than originally I expected. We potentially could be seeing somewhat of a reversal here. So I do like CAD yen to the upside. We have had a pretty nice pullback this week, coming back into some structure here, prior high, which now will be turned support. I think this is a great place to be looking for some entries and potentially swing it back into resistance. Potentially we can go further, but I think that's a great target for the week, or maybe even into next week, depends on how long it takes us to get there. But I think that's a smart place for a take profit, and you're looking at a pretty good risk reward depending on your entry. Could be looking at something pretty nice there. I'll probably say entries on the 4-hour or hourly chart probably look best for this type of swing. But judging where price is coming into, the higher lows we have already, this is a prime place for potentially another higher low to form and a swing back into resistance there, into the swing high. So pretty bullish in CAD yen. Keep an eye on that area. Basically, as long as price doesn't take out the low here, we are looking for that swing. If we go and do that, I would back away, because then this might turn into some type of weird range there, and I just wouldn't be interested to trade CAD yen at all at that point. But as long as price can stay above that, it may even come back to respect support there and then turn around. So watch out for that. But as long as we don't take out this low, remain bullish and looking for the swing back to the high. And that'll be the plan next week for CAD JPY. Okay, so now we've got pound USD. So I'm still looking for some downside for pound. Nice rally this week, coming back into this trend line area, and a very nice place for a short. Price tapped into that level at the start of the week. We had a second retest of the trend line, and so far it's acting as resistance pretty well. So I am still looking at downside. I'm looking at the weekly time frame here, and if I can get rid of my drawings there, you can see that for the past 4 weeks, as price comes back into this high here, we get 1, 2, 3, 4 wicks there to the upside. I know this week we had a bit of a wick to the downside, but well and truly resistance is holding there, and price is really struggling to break through that. Of course, that can change with all in a week, and price could suddenly rocket through that, but for now resistance is holding. So I would expect to see more downside throughout the next week or two there for pound. Long term, I do think there's more upside to be had for pound USD, but for now I do think we can still have a bit of a drop, especially if USD strength is still likely to come into the market. So in terms of opportunities, I would suggest to wait to see if price can push back into resistance again, back into that trend line area again, and find some entries there in the lower time frames. And targets, keeping it pretty simple, back into support. I'm still looking to see if price can come back into some of these areas for some longs. That's in the near future, but I think we can just focus on this opportunity at least for the upcoming week. So pound USD pretty bearish. As long as we can stay with these lower highs, remain bearish. Again, in terms of entries, ideally want price to push back into that level to find some entries have a stop loss above the high there, and then you got a nice swing there to take advantage of. So that'll be the plan next week for pound USD. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So pound CAD I'm still pretty bearish on, still looking for a bit of a drop for pound CAD and a swing to the downside. I was actually debating some entries for pound CAD, but I decided to short pound Aussie. I didn't want to go ham on selling pound basically. So I just said I'll sit with pound Aussie, but I'm looking for some downside of pound CAD as well. There's a lot of room to the downside for this one. Again, similar situation to pound Aussie, pound NZD, pound CAD. They're kind of stretched to the upside. We've been in some very nice trends, but we have come back to substantial areas. The market looks a bit fatigued. I do think there is some retracement on the cards here for pound CAD. Drop into the 4-hour chart, we've got these prior swing highs, 1, 2, kind of looking at third one here. A big double top potentially for a swing to the downside. As long as price doesn't rally through the high here, my bias looking for that swing to the downside remains. At the moment, very correct to move on the way up. So again, telling a story, we're not really pushing up with a lot of momentum. Price potentially is going to reverse at this area. If we were driving higher aggressively, then I probably would expect price to break through that, but because it's so corrective, I still do think we can roll over. Again, at least push into some support down here. This is very key support at 1.835. I think that looks like a healthy target for the trade. If you really want to push the trade, you got the swing low down there. So that makes sense as well. The risk reward looks very attractive there. But of course, I would keep an eye on this level here as well, because that could still send price up against you. But pretty bearish here in pound CAD as long as 1.86 can hold and we don't rally through the high there. If that's the case, then we're probably just going to swing back to highs at that point and see some new ones. But for now, still looking at a pretty big swing back into support next week there for pound CAD. Okay, so over to pound yen. So since we did get the break of structure this week, I am no longer looking to sell the pair. I was very bearish on pound yen coming into this week, looking for a bit of a double top there and a push down. However, we had a gap to the upside, price broke above the high and rallied and just broke structure pretty much by Tuesday. Yeah, by Tuesday, so that completely invalidated the bias. I said last week, if price does close above the high, that does invalidate the bias, and that's exactly what happened. So bias has been put to one side here. Now I'm looking for more upside. We do have some lovely bullish structure here. As long as price can remain true to that, I do think we can swing back into resistance and potentially even push higher as well. With that break of structure there on the daily chart, that could invite a pushback to these swings there as well longer term. So there is room for us to keep pushing. But yeah, for pound yen coming back into a nice area of demand, we consolidated here, of course. That's where we had the gap in the market and then the rally. But we are coming back into a nice area where a higher low looks likely to fall. And if we are going to do it here, that probably will take us back to resistance there. And that could make up for a really healthy swing there in the market. So pretty bullish here for pound yen as we come into 193. I think it's a great place to be looking for buys. Keep a close eye on the price action there early next week, because we already are trading that level. So we could be seeing entries as early as Monday. So keep an eye on that level, but really nice area. I would also keep an eye on this kind of area here too. Lines up pretty well with resistance on the left, because as long as price doesn't take out that low, I do think the swing to the upside is likely. So if you do break through that zone, I would also keep an eye on this 191.5 area, which again looks like a pretty nice trade idea as well. So yeah, very bullish here on pound yen. Keep an eye on both those levels, looking for a swing back to resistance, and that will be the plan for next week. Okay, so over to gold. So gold, I'm still bullish as a whole for this one. Looking at the higher time frames, that's kind of really where I derive my bias. The market's still very much in the uptrend. No significant break of structure, no significant break of any key levels of support either. We're still consistent with these higher lows. We've come back into a nice area of confluence here. Coming back into the prior high, we do have this lovely kind of bull flag pattern at play. We push back into the low end of the channel. So I think this is generally a very healthy area for a buy. Now, will gold potentially rally from here back to all-time highs and see some new all-time highs? Potentially, but I have no idea. Maybe it is time for us to retrace, because gold has been very stretched for a while now. I do expect gold to retrace longer term soon, but with this area of confluence still holding, I still think this is a very smart place for a buy. So if you look for entries in that area, stops below the low, I think some entries on the 4-hour or hourly chart look good. Stop loss below that low there, I think it's a smart trade. I would say first target's potentially the middle of the range there, where that dotted line is, or maybe the high of the range if you're a bit more aggressive on the trade. Potentially we do swing back to highs, so it's a situation where I'll probably trail some positions because you don't know with gold. This could be a massive swing that takes us to 4K. It could be a nice idea to trail stops in these conditions, but definitely there's some fixed targets you could look at as well with the channel there, especially coming back into that high there. But in terms of a smart place for an entry, I like this area. If price was to start bearish and we just bleed and break through the level, then of course I'll scrap that bullish bias. But for now, it looks pretty good to me. Look for some entries and hopefully capitalize on a nice swing there for gold. Okay, so on to Bitcoin. So very bullish on Bitcoin as a whole, very bullish market, just about coming back into the all-time high resistance. Got the all-time highs at 109K roughly. I do think prices are likely to see new highs past that point. So in terms of taking advantage of the opportunity, I'll only be focused on buys right now. There's two areas which look good, so the retest of this range or potentially the retest of support prices created on the 4-hour chart. If we remain very bullish and don't see much bearish momentum, then that's probably the best you'll get with Bitcoin. If price does see a bit of bearish pressure come into play, we crack support, then we might be lucky enough to get a retest of this level here. More so kind of focus at the high around 97,700. And from that, we could see a nice swing back into resistance. But the idea is that I'm expecting new all-time highs. I'm expecting more bullish momentum. And it just depends how aggressive Bitcoin wants to be. We might not even get the test of that level. But that would be my first area of interest. If that can hold, great. If not, then 97,600 becomes the level I'll look at. But my expectation is more upside for Bitcoin. I'm not seeing any bearish signals at all with this pair. So very, very bullish. Keep an eye on 101. 300 and 97,600 as areas to potentially buy from. But yeah, expecting new highs next week for Bitcoin. Okay, so over to Aussie Yen. So I am bullish with Aussie Yen. I do think there's more upside to be had with this one. I'm looking at the higher time frames. We had a really big sell. We have come back into major support on the weekly chart, tapping into this level. Nice reaction. I do think there's still room to the upside for Aussie Yen. The way we had that massive sell a few weeks back and prices kind of just erased all of that with this move here. I'm basically looking for a inverse head and shoulder pattern. Here's your left shoulder, here's your head, and there's your right shoulder. So I'm looking for a higher low here to form for a swing back into resistance. And like I said, I do think we can go further, but I think a simple trade idea, just looking for a higher low, swing back into resistance, can potentially call it a day there. You can always leave smaller positions to run if you want to, but that's the idea I have for next week. We're not too far away from possible entries at that level, 92. If we could push down a little bit further, stay corrective, maybe a nice double bottom, I feel like that's a smart place for a trade. Entries similar to that, stops below the level, targets back at resistance. That looks like a really nice healthy setup for me, especially if it's at this level here, where we've seen support really hold well in the past. Potentially could happen again, and of course the confirmations will be very important. But like I said, I still do see weakness in the yen itself. If I had a look at the JPY basket, it looks like that potentially could still see some more downside, which should help Aussie yen push up higher. So keeping a close eye on that level and looking to see if we can swing it back into resistance. And that does bring us to the end of the analysis, guys. So if you have found it useful, please be sure to drop a like on the video. It does really help out, gets the content out there more. So I do really appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel whilst you're at it as well, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any streams or uploads in the future. Check out the description. It does have the link to the Discord for elevating traders. You can find updates there, chat with other traders, chat with myself. I share ideas there. You can share your own ideas there as well if you are interested. But guys, really appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you all in the next one.